Well, good morning, Miss Farrow. How are you?
I'm doing well, Mike. How are you today?
That's fine. Let me start off by saying good morning and welcome to the Overtime Sports Show, coming to you live from the city of Medicine, Durham, North Carolina, the greatest city on the planet. Well, Miss Farrow, I want to say once again, thank you for coming on the Overtime Sports Show. Today, we're going to talk about your brand new book that you've written, but for the audience to understand this and give it some perspective, Ms. Farrow has appeared on the Overtime Sports Show that's on Blog Talk Radio, and it's the first time she's appeared on the one that's actually you can see. So I want to say welcome for that, and also. She's a friend of the show. She's a friend of mine, and she's a wonderful person. And I tell you, this is going to be a very inspiring few minutes that you're going to spend here with us. I can't think of any person better to bring that to you. So once again, Ms. Farrell, welcome to the Overtime Sports Show, and we'll just jump right into it. Now, your book is called The Common Good, and I must say, you know me, I'm not a kumbaya, I'm not peaches and cream. I'm a meat and potatoes guy. It is what it is. Just bring it. Simple as that. But this book, after looking through it and reading some of the passages in there and some of the just the deepness, the spirituality, the emotion of the book, it has given me a reason for pause. So let's do two things. One, just talk about yourself and explain how you came on this spiritual journey, how you went on that journey to put that in writing.
Oh,
How
well,
did you
thank you,
write this
Mike.
book?
First
What
of all, thank you
inspired you to
for
write this
allowing me
book?
the opportunity to be on your show again. And it's always exciting to have the opportunity to talk to you. I've known you since our childhood, so I've known you a number of years. So I know you're not a kumbaya person.
Okay. No,
No, I understand. But
no
there's so many
way.
things that happen to us in our journey that, sometimes you feel that you need to share things with other people because I believe that we're all here on a journey and we're here to inspire each other. And so this book came after a number of years. I've been in business now for almost 20 years, but in my profession for almost 30 years, but I've had the opportunity to do a lot of travel and meet people all over the country and in many other countries, over 17 countries and territories. And as I've met people, I have been inspired, because they've had such an effect on my life. When we look at television a lot, you see so many negative things on television all the time, and you always hear the bad things that are happening. And rarely do you ever see the good things, the people that are in communities all over the country, all over the world that are really working for the common good. And so my inspiration was to really get the message out to everyone, is that there are plenty of people working for the common good, but it's something that really starts with each of us. We have to look inward at ourselves and what we're doing and how we are living a purposeful life. And I think that's just so important. So, living on purpose, three things, the purpose and, living on purpose and also the mindfulness and also relationships. But everybody desires to live a purposeful life and to look within and say, well, why am I here on this earth? What am I here to do? I think everyone has that desire to live on purpose.
Yeah, now you look around the country, what's happening now in politics and it seems to be what's happening here in North Carolina was just legislative hate, which is that's all I call it. It's a solution looking for a problem here in North Carolina. I think that, and I'm talking about House Bill 2 that was put up. The bathroom issue was just a smokescreen to the greater issue that was deeper into the bill about just institutionalized discrimination. And you and I both grew up in the 60s, and I'm telling you right now, I'm getting this feeling that pretty soon that the way things are going, we'll be going into the back of the restaurant again. I mean, that's what it feels like we're headed towards, all because of an Obama presidency. All of a sudden now, Santa Claus isn't real anymore. The myth has been exploded. Now, if you look at a book like yours, and I know like it's a deeply spiritual book, how can that book relate to like the repairing or helping to repair what's going on now between people? Basically, how can it help get rid of the hate that's out there? I know wisdom in part it takes care of a lot of ills, because the older I get, I know, the more I hear my grandma's voice in the back of my head with that wisdom, my mom and dad's voice in the back of my head with that wisdom. What kind of wisdom do you think it will take for the world to see exactly what's going on right now and just stop all the hate for no reason at all?
And anger and all of the negative emotion that you see comes from an underlying emotion of fear. It's the fear that exists. We are afraid. Now, to add some history to that, what I believe is that we are all divinely created by one creator. And when you look at your physical journey, everything that you needed for your physical journey, you had when you were born. You didn't do any of that. Your eyes were where they were supposed to be, and your nose was where they were supposed to be. And you had everything you needed. You didn't do that. Your education didn't do that. Nothing about you did that. It was divinely created, and all of us came from that same place. And so when you look at how we start to define ourselves, because we're all the same, at the core of who we are, we're all the same. But we allow the differences in our lives to start to define who we are and associate and attach ourselves to those differences. I am where I live, and that's my identity. I am my income, that's my identity. I am my education. And there's nothing wrong with embracing things. But to say I'm going to live in my community, and therefore how I define myself, and I'm not going to have anything to do with people outside of that. I'm not going to get to know people outside of that. And when you don't get to know people, who they are really, underneath all of the anger and all of those things, I think it was Mother Teresa that used to say, when I look at everybody, I can see the good and the God in them. And so, and she really truly believed that, because underneath all the layers of anger and hatred and all those things, it's just a lot of fear. And when we really get to know people, then we start to learn that they really want the same thing that we do. They want to know that their life has some type of meaning and that they're here to live out that purpose, whatever that purpose is for them. So I think we have to start there. I think we do have to start there, and with ourselves, first of all, to say, what can I do in my life to really make a difference? And start small. For some people, it might mean just being the best person that you can be for your family. For some, it might mean your community and what you can do differently for your community, and to get involved in the movement. And I do think we're seeing a movement in our country where we're seeing, I call it the rising of the new dawn. And people are starting to say, well, you know what? It doesn't have to be this way. We don't have to be divided like that. We can come together for the common good, because we have to realize when we're not, and we're focusing on our differences, then there's no foundation that can survive when we only focus on our differences. We can't live in a divided country as such, because it will just it will not be good for anybody. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's like I give an analogy all the time. I can take a black kid, a white kid, an Asian kid, an Indian kid, Hispanic kid, you name it. It doesn't make any difference who it is, anywhere around the world. And you put them in a room, and you know what? The only thing they know is, I'm here with another kid. Not a black kid,
and
not a white kid, not a green kid, but I'm here with
right,
another human
right. But
being,
when we're
another
born, that's
kid
what
just
children
like
do.
me.
That's what babies do. They
And
don't
we
associate with
should
all
learn
of
from that.
the hatred and they love everybody and they love everything and they don't see those differences. But as we continue to grow up into the world, we start to shape ourselves by those differences. So what I talk about now is a lot of mindfulness. You hear the words now: mindfulness, awareness, consciousness. The subtitle of my book is How Living a More Conscious Life Can Heal a Nation, One Heart, One Mind, One Thought at a Time. Because we are our thoughts. Whatever we think it, so that's what comes into our life, however we think. And so, we do have some responsibility to say, well, gratitude. Just the fact that I got up this morning and I am alive, I am thankful. I'm a Christian, so I'm thankful to my God for allowing me to get up this morning because, there's so many people that did not get up this morning. And so when you are mindful of just where you are now, that's the awareness that you created, and living in consciousness is that I'm grateful for this time right here. But when we start to focus on the past and, and the things that have happened, the anger starts to build up, the regret starts to build up, and we start to live with with regrets, actually, and depression starts to set in. So there's a very different state of mind, and the more that exists, the more it sort of, encumbers our entire life. Then we start looking in the future. What is going to happen to me? How are things going to work out for me? How are things going to work out for my children? And then, there's this fear that sets in and anxiety sets in. But right here in this moment, where we are right now, I can be mindful. I can be grateful for just being here. And so I've started to understand as I've traveled so much in my life, over 1 million miles of air travel I've done around the world. And I'm thinking, it's really interesting is that things that I didn't notice, I notice now. When you think about the butterfly and how beautiful that butterfly is, it started as a caterpillar, but it instinctively knew how to transition into that butterfly. So, building that cocoon and all of those things that it does in its metamorphosis to change into that butterfly, it knew how to do that. Nobody taught it how to do that. So there are a lot of things that are inside of us that we just instinctively know. But I think sometimes we are afraid of our greatness. We have greatness beyond, words. And we are so afraid of that. If a butterfly, a caterpillar, knew how to do that and make that transition and transformation, just think of what we can do. But sometimes we just allow ourselves to feel that we don't know what to do, we don't know how to do it, but you go within yourself, create that consciousness and the awareness, and you will be amazed at what comes your way and what you can do. The meditation, the prayerfulness, whatever you believe, whatever faith you believe in, the foundation of that is love. And love is the most powerful weapon in the world. It is. It's far more powerful than hate or anger or even fear. Love is the foundation of everything. And when we are not showing or demonstrating that love, then all of these other things start to get in the way. The fear and it starts to build up. But it's almost like light. I equate love to light. So light basically will light up any degree of darkness. Just a single light will basically light up any space of darkness. And that's what love does. Love lights up spaces of darkness. And I believe we all have that inside of us. But many times it's the fear that takes over and starts to divide and starts to create all the things that we see now. And so whether it's a business or a politician, because I say that between religion, business, and politics, there are similarities there. Because the people who are involved in all of those things, whether it's running a business, whether it's a politician, or whether it's a religious leader, the foundation of all of that is love. I care about people, and that's why I'm doing what I do. I have this foundation, basically, that, at the core of who I am, I'm just really here to make a difference in people's lives. And so we're all connected in ways that we haven't even begun to understand how we're all connected. And even if you're not, religious or spiritual, and I say this to people because I have plenty of people that in my circle that, they don't have a religion, but if you are doing the very best you can and you believe that you can make a difference in people's lives, you're not a bad person. Whether you choose to believe or attach yourself to a particular religion or not, you're not a bad person. And so, we're all, I believe, divine in many ways, and we have so much to give and so much to offer when we can come together and we can do that.
Yeah, you kind of blew through my next question. My next question was, what in your life? You say a million air miles. You traveled all over the world. You've seen probably from some of what I call 5-star places to some of the places that are really tough to inhabit and tough for the people to make it. So you've seen both ends of the spectrum: the good, the bad, the middle, the happy, the sad, and as I like to say, the three: the good, the bad, and the ugly, all over the world. So you've seen all that. So what in seeing that and experiencing that with people who have and don't have, who won't, who have dreams, who have desires, just because they don't have money doesn't mean they can't dream. They have to think outside the box. And to be honest, these people who don't have a lot and they're still surviving,
absolutely,
in my opinion, are a lot stronger than we are, because they're having to be creative every single day. They're having to come up with stuff every single day just to survive. How has that affected you spiritually as far as writing this book and just in your own journey in life?
The innateness to be survivors. When we understand the miracles that we are. Like I started out in the interview saying, we are living miracles. The fact that your heart will beat over 2 billion times in a lifetime. You didn't do anything to make that happen. We are more powerful than we could ever understand as human beings, because we're created by a divine creator. We all come here that way. And so when you start looking at people in communities that understand their purpose, they've had to make incredible sacrifices, but there's a calling in their soul that said to them, no matter what, this is what I feel my soul is calling me to do. I have no money, I have no means, I'm not sure how I'm going to get there, but there's something inside of me saying, I can do this. And I'll give you an example. I met this incredible person in the state of Pennsylvania, I would say. And she told me this story, and it was just such an interesting and inspiring story, is that for 18 years, she was a nun. And she, sort of, that was basically her life. And the church was really positioning her for some great things. She had completed 2 PhDs, 2 doctorate degrees in her 20s. So they were positioning her to be the president or of a major university of some sort. But she decided, because she had this calling in her soul, to follow her soul. But she left all of that behind. She got married. She was a nun, and she got married, and she went into one of the poorest communities that she could find, where there was such high illiteracy, and there were so many things in that community that was struggling. And that's what she felt that her soul was calling her to do. And she started with nothing. She had no means to do anything. She wanted to make sure that the people had health care because a lot of people didn't in that community. So she built a healthcare center, and so that people without insurance could come and they would have a place to go. And she started it with nothing, and even drove many of the patients to get services there and use volunteer doctors to provide those services. So that's where she started. And I met her recently, and last year there were 40-some thousand people that visited that health center. Yes. I mean, so that's just an amazing, inspiring story. So it's people like that that just give me pause and say, wow, and we are so focused on what's happening on TV that's brainwashing us, thinking the whole world is like this and we're all falling apart and everything is going to, just fall apart. When in reality, there are so many people in the trenches that are just like this person that I just described, who really are making a difference for the common good of the people. And I'd like to focus on them.
Yeah, being a part of the media myself, I understand exactly what you mean. I mean, my fellow compadres will rush to the scene of a mass shooting and make sure that you see the gore at 6 o'clock when you're trying to eat dinner, but they won't go around the corner to show 30 kids in a room with computers are learning how to read a book, which will make sure that that mass shooting around the corner doesn't occur. We don't give enough credit in this country to things that work. Okay. One thing I've always said, I've worked one time with the state of North Carolina. And one thing I've always said about the state of North Carolina is if it does not work, the state will run at it full speed and give it every bit of money they can find. If it does not work, if it works, then they find every reason to get rid of it and not fund it. They want to be able to look at the negative and say, well, we threw $275 billion of your tax money into this project and it didn't work, instead of saying we threw $275 billion into healthcare, we threw $275 billion into literacy, or into stopping the spread of some of these diseases. Now understand that you have to have some personal what's the word I'm looking for? You have to take care of yourself. You have to have some personal responsibility for what you do. I understand that because, if you have one baby and you have another one, well, you knew what happened to cause the first one. If you have another one, then that's kind of basically on you, almost like the first one, but the second one's definitely on you. But then we have a problem. Okay, let's just say that is a problem. They did have it, but still, we as a society have to deal with that particular issue because it's becoming an issue that's going to be a problem later on down the road. So no matter how you look at it, guess what?
Absolutely right.
You are your brother's
we
keeper.
have a lot of things in this country that we have not come to really try to really do something about. I mean, we know that we have a problem with mass shootings. We have a problem with shootings in general. I mean, about every single day, about 300 people are shot, about 90 will be killed. And so, to not really look at that and examine that and try to understand that and to develop some type of help for those communities that are being just really torn apart by those kinds of things is shame on us, because we are our brother's keeper. I think it was Dr. Martin Luther King who said that we've built neighborhoods, but we have not built brotherhoods. We've not built a brotherhood. So we don't see ourselves as our neighbor's keeper until something happens to us. And then that's where the transformation occurs, because in our lives, as we go through this journey, things will happen in our lives. And that's where you start to see this quantum shift. Well, this is how I believed previously, But now that I've gone through that, now that I've had this tragic event, now that something has happened in my life or maybe to my family, now all of a sudden I start to think differently. And sometimes that quantum leap that happens that starts to transform us to look at situations differently is really important in the whole change or transformation of a community or even a country as people start to change. Once we start to reach a certain level of change among the people, where we're saying we're not going to tolerate this, something needs to happen. And when enough people get to that space, then something will begin to happen. Because we see things through the lenses of our experience. And so if we haven't had the experiences, certain experiences in our lives, it's hard for us to sometimes identify with people who have had that experience. If you've never had a situation with not having health insurance or not being able to go to the doctor because you can't pay for health insurance, then you can't understand what it's like for somebody who is in that predicament until it happens to you. And so, you know, as things start to happen in our lives and we start to become more mindful that we can make a difference one heart at a time, we can start changing how things are in our environment by just basically how we respond to things. And if we're too quiet, Dr. King also talked about the silence. It's not just the anger and all the chaos that you see, it's the silence of people who don't use their voice, they don't vote, they don't want to be involved in situations. That is our greatest tragedy.
Yeah, you know, speaking of the voting thing, of course, coming up, we're going to have an election. To me, this one is going to be bigger than Obama's. This one's going to be an election coming up that is going to define our country in more ways than one. We've already seen on one side what the defining issues or what they want it to be. And that particular part doesn't include everyone. We've already seen on the other side somebody who insulted people on the side of the votes that they're going to need. So their America doesn't include everyone either. So it's almost like now, I saw a picture of a young girl holding a sign. She's about 4 years old. It brought tears to my eyes. Now, you know, for it to affect me, it's got to be something. It's got to be powerful because, like I say, I ain't kumbaya. You know, I'm the guy that takes a hatchet to kill a mosquito. I don't care about that. But she was holding a picture, and pretty little girl, and it said, "Please let me grow up." That was the most powerful picture I have ever seen in my life. Little black girl. You could tell she was in the streets of Chicago because you could see the Chicago skyline in the background. And just let me grow up. Now, how can we as a nation, how can we as human beings, as adults, as people who are supposed to change the world. When we were going through school, we had ideas when we were young, we were going to change the world. Even if it was one brick at a time, we were going to change the world. But our world has not changed. Our world has gotten worse. Now, here's the key. I don't know if our world has gotten worse or with the birth of social media and iPhones and cell phones and being able to record things, if what we're seeing now hasn't gone on all the time, and it seems like it's worse, but it's really been there all the time because we can actually see it. But what can we do as a people? And I believe it all starts with spirituality. Spiritually, what can we do to help our generation, this generation, move forward and be the best they can be? What can we do to ensure as best we can, because we don't know God's plan, but ensure that that little girl actually gets chance to grow up, actually gets chance to be what she can be. She may
And
be
I
the
think
young
that's
lady to
what we
find the
have to
cure to
focus
cancer.
on. You're
I don't know. But
absolutely
what can we
right.
do to ensure
We
that
have
our
to focus.
children have a
It's not
future?
about us. It is about future generations. And that's what we have to think about. We have to think about that little girl. You look into her eyes and be able to say to her that you're going to do everything you can to make the difference that you can make, to live out your purpose. Because each of us, I believe, are part of the bigger picture. And we have a piece of the puzzle as to why we're here on this earth and what we're here to do while we're here on this earth. And when we live according to that in our own little, in our space and fulfilling that purpose, I believe we fulfill God's bigger plan of being what we need to be on this earth. And so I think it has to begin with each of us. And first of all, we have to understand and look within ourselves to know who we are and understand why we're here. And that takes mindfulness. It takes being aware of your calling and your inner soul and the voice within you that speaks to you. And even churches is, if I'm going to church on Sunday, every single Sunday, and I'm, because I want to worship and I want to praise God. But at the same time, all the people around me on the outside of that church are suffering underneath bridges, living homelessly, or there's so many things that are happening, and I'm not mindful of that, then something is not right, because it can't be just about what happens inside of the building, of the institution. It has to be me knowing that I am the church. Every person that I meet, I'm going to affect their lives in some way, because I believe every person that comes into your life is a teacher, and you're a teacher. Something is going to be learned in the exchange of you. And so you can choose to be the best person that you can be, and that will inspire someone else. And if that inspires that person, then that person will go on to inspire someone else. And we can create a movement just through that kind of love. And I do believe that because of the power of love is so strong within us, we just have to embrace that, accept that, know that, and spread that. That's how.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I've had an experience here in Durham. Uh, for lack of a better term, I
Mm-hmm.
decided I was going to do some volunteer work at one of the local soup kitchens. Okay, that's so everybody understands what I'm talking about. And you know me about cooking. If water can burn, I burn the water. But I went in and I helped serve. Okay, and you're feeding. And what was a shock to me, and I think everybody needs to get off their butt and go take a look at what's going on, is how many families just don't have anything. You'll have a mother, a father. Believe it or not, I mean, they think that everybody in the country is a single mother. That's not true. You have families out there who are trying to make it together. So you had a mother and a father, and you had three kids. And we were serving them dinner. And I noticed that the young lady continued to look over there at me like she wanted something from me, and I couldn't figure out what it was. So finally, when I finished doing what I was doing, I walked over to the table. I introduced myself to her parents and everything, and I said, "Young lady, I noticed you've been like you want something, like you've been looking over there like you wanted this. There's something I can get for you." And she looked up at me with those beautiful, beautiful brown eyes, and she told me, she said, "Well, sir, I was looking because," and she was very, very polite. "I'm looking because I wanted to know if I can have something else to eat. Now, I'm telling you right now, it brought me to my knees. It's about to bring me to my knees now. That's why I don't like to talk about it. But to have a young girl, she's about 5, maybe 6 at the most,
In America. And
asking me in America, asking me in America, the richest country on the planet, whether or not she can have something to
wow.
eat. Tell me what's wrong. Tell me
It
what's wrong. What is going on that causes all this? Um, it affects me now. It really touches me now that I can live in a country that would care more about killing than about feeding, that would care more about how they look on television and how we are treating our elderly, that how we are treating our kids, how we are taking care of our own country. We'll spend 38 billion, reach in the bank and pull it out and send it to
it's
some
not that
foreign
we don't
country somewhere, but not spend
a child.
38 cents a
Yeah,
day
and the reality.
to feed a
The
child.
reality is, Mike,
I'm
that
not talking about
one
an adult, I'm
out
talking
of
about a
every
child.
5 children in this country, one out of every 5 children, not adults, but children, do not have enough food to eat. They will go to bed hungry in our country, the richest country in the world. And that is just, it's not acceptable. It's not acceptable. And that has to change. But again, if we see that just as a number, and like unlike yourself, look into the face of that child. When you look into the face of someone, of a child asking you for food, it changes. It reaches someplace deep inside of you. And so we can go through life and not have that kind of interaction with people because we're developing policies, but we really are
Oh yeah.
not really reaching the people that are being affected by those policies. It becomes just merely an exercise. But when you have that kind of face to face with people who live in those situations, and that child who is going to go to bed hungry because she doesn't have enough food, it changes something within you.
It touched a nerve that I mean it and from that point on with the overtime sports show and everything else, I do food drives. I do toy drives. I do every kind of drive I can. I drive my car, deliver for I do everything I can because
For the common good,
that night
it was an awakening.
changed my life forever. And I guess it changed it for the common good. because because I just don't I cannot understand. There's no one on this planet that can sit down, a politician, which is mostly where it comes from, a head of health and human services, head of social services can sit down beside me and explain to me why that kid doesn't have anything to eat. I just want you to explain it to me. I want you to look in my face and look in those beautiful brown eyes of that little girl and tell me and tell her why she has to be hungry in the greatest country on the planet. Explain that to me. Take me on that spiritual journey because it will make me so mad. It makes you spiritual. Explain to me why that child can't eat. That's all I want to know. Now, we're not talking about gourmet meals. We're talking about basic food that any human would need to grow strong, to be healthy, and explain. Another thing I want them to explain to me also, and I know you've seen this because this is what you do, explain to me why that child can't receive medical care in the greatest country on the planet. Explain to me why that child can't be clothed. And I know what everybody's going to say. Well, they have parents. Well, if you know the history of our country, that playing field they're talking about leveling, that's been leveled, has been kind of tilted. So as hard as the parents try, they can't get traction because it's hard to climb up a glacier when it's when it's regular, but when it's tilted, you can't go up. But I just wanted to explain to that child why they can't. And that really, and when I was reading some of the stuff in your book, and I read the quotes that you put out every day, and I read the wisdom that you try to impart on the people, and it's great, by the way, I always go back to that little girl with those beautiful brown eyes looking up at me. Can I have something else to eat? In America.
That is
my America.
That is so powerful. It is so powerful, but something so simple. There was a reason where that happened when it happened for you, because it's been a change agent. And I, through our journey, we all have those kinds of circumstances and things that happen that really start to transform us from the inside out. It's no longer a number. It's no longer just a community. It's really a human being. This is a human being. This is not an animal. This is a human being who is hungry. This is a child who is hungry. And we have that. And we can ignore it if we want to. Because, if we start to ignore things, if we continue to ignore things, it will be the detriment of us. It will destroy us. It will destroy us. If we can't ignore that, we can't continue to live in the division that we have.
Yeah.
If we're not working for the common good of our country, we will all suffer as a result of that. And we've seen that. We've seen that happen.
Yeah. That was, I've had a few defining moments in my life. And I've had some tragic defining moments in my life. But that right there, that night, that very instant, that very second, searching, uplifting moment of my entire existence. I've never had a feeling go through me like that before. I've never experienced just, you know what it was? It was just pure tea, outright, unadulterated hurt. I was just absolutely.
No, I understand. You're absolutely right.
Because here I am. I don't have. I mean, I'm not rich by any means, but I have so much, and she has nothing. A child has nothing. I can't put up with that. I can't let that happen. So for the rest of my days on this planet, I devoted myself. I have a daughter, and I could just not imagine seeing her in that particular situation. And hopefully one day she'll get married and she'll have kids. And I don't want my grandkids to be in that situation at all. So we have to, as the generations come in and go out, because we will, we have to do things for the common good. We have to. If we display the love and the compassion and the emotion and the feeling for our fellow man, and it catches on like, I like to say, spreads like the flu, then after a while, the light of love, like you said, will push out the dark of evil, and there's no place for it. There's no place for it. And if I could have taken a picture of that little girl's eyes, I think the world would have been a much better place if I could have displayed that. I really do. Because it was hurt. It was fear. It was deeply troubling to see her, just to look. I can't describe it to you, but I can tell you it was one that would have taken your breath away. But anyway.
Well, this
I'm getting
this
a bit
is what
soapy
I
here,
would
and I don't want to do that.
I talk about a lot of these things in the book, and it's certainly my inspiration for writing the book is just to get people to think differently, to just look within and ask yourself the questions. What has your life meant on this earth? Have I done as much as I could do to make the difference? Have I lived here on purpose? Have I, embraced my neighbors? Your neighbors are not just the person who lived beside you. Your neighbors are people. It's all of God's people. And so, because we have to start to develop relationships, we don't spend enough time getting to know each other, unfortunately. And many times it's much easier to just kind of stay in our, similar groups. And so therefore we don't get to know people in other different groups, different populations, different ethnic groups, because we're comfortable in our group. And so we really need to spend more time getting to know each other, because when you get to know each other, it's different. You start to think differently because you know the person. You don't just lump them into some group or class. You know that person as a human being. And it's developing those relationships, whether it's in a business with employees or with customers, whether it's politicians with their constituents, whether it's religious leaders with their church memberships. When we get to know people, really get to know them, it really changes how we see them. But if we don't spend the time or invest the time getting to know each other, then that's really sad, because then we start to see ourselves as being so different, and that begins to divide us even more. So read the book. It's called The Common Good, Rising of a New Dawn, because I do think that there's a movement occurring behind the scenes, beyond what you're seeing on TV. There is something happening, and it will continue to happen as long as we continue to look within ourselves and start to transform ourselves from the inside out and project that love that is within us. And it's really how living a more conscious life can heal a nation, one heart, one mind, one thought at a time. One person can change a nation. Nelson Mandela, South Africa. He spent 27 years in prison. And what happened during that time? I'm sure he had a lot of time to look within himself, to meditate, to spend that time with the divine creator. And when he got out, he brought an entire nation together and became the president in 1994. As a matter of fact, today, 1994, he became the president of South Africa. This man who spent 27 years in prison. Look at Gandhi, healed an entire nation. He looked at love. Love was the most powerful force for him. And he said nonviolence. He didn't have to do it by violence. But if you can do that and you can have that kind of power with love, just think of what one person can do that. Just think of what all of us can do.
Well, if someone wants to get your book, how would they go about getting it? I know that
sure,
it's at
you
Barnes
can
and
go
Noble. I
to
know they
my
can order it
website.
online. So tell everybody how they can get that
website
wonderful book.
thecommongoodbook.com, thecommongoodbook.com, or Juanita, JUANITAS, Farrow, FARROW.com. And you'll see you can order the book online from Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and all of those sites. So I am so thankful to you again, Mike, for allowing me this opportunity. It's great to see you again. And it's also great to be able to get this message out that I believe that I was divinely inspired to get out.
Well, I tell you, you're certainly welcome. You're a friend of the show. You're going to be on again and again and again, because I know this is a sports show, but I really believe that it is important to get this information out, because I'm telling you, we need to change, all of us. I mean, like you said, I'm not a kumbaya guy. I'm gonna take a baseball bat and do whatever I need to do with it. But there comes a time in life when you got to stop just being silly and just look at the world differently. And I've had experiences that made me do that. So thank you so very much. And thank you for appearing on the Overtime Sports Show. And that wraps it up today, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be on again later on this afternoon. I do have another show at 2 p.m. with Cynthia Ray Harris, and she's with Coach Up. And if you want your kids to learn the fine art of basketball and softball and baseball and volleyball, well, she is the one to do it.
Thank you, Mike.
And
Goodbye.
she can help your kid get to the next level. Once again, Ms. Farrow, thank you so very much, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.